Hi, everybody. Welcome back. This is Miss Andrea for another lesson from Drawing from Your Life. I am going to cover shading and value today, and it is a lesson that is going to build on what I did last time. So last time we did line drawing and contour line. So if you haven't got a chance to yet watch that one, if you could just go back and watch it first, that would really help. Contour line is basically just doing the outside of something. And today we're going to build on that and make our drawings have more life or dimension through shading. So this whole lesson is called Drawing from Your Life. And I spoke of it last time, but I want to just remind everybody that no matter where you are, if you're in kindergarten, first or second grade, you may have learned some things over your time in school or in your life. And that's wonderful. I want you to just take anything that I've taught you and try to bring it up your skills wherever you are. So if you're a kindergartner, maybe this is the first time you've heard some of these concepts, that's great. Just take it from where you are. Or if you're a second grader and you have heard some of these concepts before and even done some projects, I just encourage you to just kind of bring what you know to the next level by just really, thinking deeply about what I'm talking about. And it might bring you a little bit more insight and knowledge than when you did it initially, the first time. Okay, so welcome. And also, it's important to bring your own creativity on board. When I say drawing from your life, I also want you to think about yourself as in the center of this whole experience. So what that means is your experience as a person who has creative impulses are going to be in the center. That means you are going to not necessarily compare yourself to others. You're just going to look at what you've done and think of it as a form of self-expression instead of just focusing on the final finished project. Because art is wonderful because it's this whole rich experience of experiencing the whole process around it, not just the final project, but the whole entire experience. Okay, so I actually invite everyone to just open up to that experience, this creative time together, and really put yourself in the center of that, because this is the life of an artist, and it's very cool, and it's very rich to do things in that manner. So welcome. All right, so our first activity is I'm going to back up and talk about value. Value is how we refer to colors when we're just doing black to white. Okay, so with color, we have a whole range of colors. But when we talk about value, we're not talking about colors, we're talking about black and white. So today we will be working with just black and white with our pencils. So that means we're going to move into gathering our materials. So I'm going to go over what you need to get. So you're going to gather your materials. And Eric's going to put up a nice slide for us. Okay, so here we have recommended or required materials. Is you're going to need a piece of paper. This can be just any piece of copy paper is fine. It helps if it's white. And you're going to need a pencil. If you can put a fresh point on it, that's awesome. And you can either use the eraser on your pencil, or you can use either of these two gum erasers, which works really great. And a straight edge. Okay, so I'm going to use a book or a ruler. So if you don't have a ruler, I recommend you use a book or anything with a flat surface that we're just going to call a straight edge. So like a nice spine of a book would work too. If you have it, I also encourage you to grab a ruler and a piece of fruit, a bowl, anything like simple that you could draw, that you could just have right in your own home. Okay, so that could be a piece of fruit, a bowl, a cup, nothing super fancy. We're just working on shading, so we want it to be a fairly simple object. And also, if you have a little mirror, a little hand mirror, that you could bring, that would be great. It's not necessary, but if you wanted to use it to draw from life, that would be great to have as well. All right, so once we have all of our materials, we're going to start with the first activity of shading. Okay, and the first activity is called creating a value continuum. Remember that when I spoke of value, I was talking about the black and white and all the shades in between. So I'm going to show you an example of a value continuum, okay? All right, so I'm going to actually put this up on a pedestal so you can see even closer. Now, this is an example of a value continuum. I'm using this as an example, even though when we make ours, we're going to do 5. So we're going to do half less than what we see here. But this is to show you all the range of value from dark all the way to light, 10 being the lightest. You see, 10 is the lightest, which is white, and 0 is the darkest, which is black. Okay, so we are going to create this continuum using our pencil and our paper, but I have a specific way to do it, and I'm going to first bring this example up because this is where we're going. We're not going to have time to do a value continuum with 10 different values. Instead, we're going to focus on doing 5 different values from very dark to light. Okay, so here you can see that 1 is going to be your darkest color and 5 is going to be your lightest, which means white. So this one, we're not going to do any drawing on it. We're not going to do any shading. We're going to leave that blank, but we're still going to use it as a value number because that is in our continuum of dark to light. Okay, so first things first, you're going to take your piece of paper. And remember, you have the option, when you draw, you have the option of holding your paper either in landscape, which is the orientation that you see here, also known as horizontal, and sometimes known as hamburger. This orientation, which is from straight up and down, is known as portrait. Okay, and portrait is also vertical orientation. Sometimes you call it hot dog or carrot. So we want you to have your paper in a landscape orientation, okay? Because we're going to use the edge to make our value continuum. Okay, so if you have a ruler, you can just take it now and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just kind of cool to use a ruler. If you got the tools, you might as well use them. Okay, so we're going to fold our paper on the edge here about an inch. Now, if you don't have a ruler, you can just estimate, okay? So you're going to take your paper and you want to line up those corners on the bottom and gently crease it. All right, and from here, we're going to make our continuum. So you want to open up your paper and you want the fold to be facing up, okay? I'm going to hold it closer so you can see what I mean. All right, so this is going to be up. All right, so from here, you can take your ruler, or if you don't have a ruler, you can just kind of estimate approximately 1 inch squares, okay? So I'm going to start at, I'm going to put my ruler, I'm going to start putting the edge kind of away from the end like that. Okay, you see there's this much extra, and I'm just going to make what we call a hash mark on each of the inch marks. So I'm going to put this up because I'm seeing on my screen that I can't see it very well. So that probably means you can't either. So let's take a closer look here. All right, so again, we have the ruler. We are moving the ruler away from the edge of the paper. And I'm going to make my first mark on the edge of the ruler. Now you notice that there's just a little mark here. This is where you start the inch. And then you see here, this is inch 1, inch 2. I'm making little hash marks, okay? Little hash marks like this, 3, 4, and 5. This is going to give us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 squares, okay? Now from here, you can either take your ruler or your straight edge and just make lines. And this is going to make an individual square, rectangle for your value to go. Now remember, the value here, if we bring up my example again, you'll see that the value here is going to be white. So we're going to leave it blank. So we're going to number these now. The first one's going to be 1, second one 2, 3, 4, and 5. 5 is going to be your white, so you're going to leave this blank. And 1 is going to be your darkest. So let's start by take your pencil and, well, actually, before you begin, and let me see if I can get this to be a little bit better adjusted. Okay. All right. So a couple of things about shading. When you shade, things to keep in mind. Last lesson, we talked about holding the pencil down by the point to really be able to draw with a lot of precision. Today, I'm going to ask you to hold your pencil at times a little bit farther away from the point to help you shade with a very light touch and use the side of your pencil. So remember, it's absolutely a-okay to turn your paper to make it easier for you to draw or shade. So I encourage you to feel free to move your paper as you go to make it easy. And do you see how I'm using the side of the pencil? My pencil point is kind of flat rather than at an angle. This way I am using the thickness of the graphite rather than the tip or point, okay? This is how I get a nice shading and a thicker line right from the beginning, okay? So you see how I am shading here. This is going to be the first value. This is going to be your darkest value. So things to keep in mind about shading is that if you want something to be dark, you're going to do two things. You're going to use more pressure on your pencil. So that means a little bit more strength or pressing. So you're going to press harder for dark. And you're also going to have overlapping lines or areas of shading, okay? So overlapping and also pressure on the pencil will give you a darker color, okay? And again, this does not need to be perfect. This is just to give you, this is going to help you as you do the shading part, just kind of look and see a couple 5 different values to kind of help you bring in those values to your drawing to make your drawing more interesting. All right, and then 2 is going to be the same thing. You're going to use the side of your pencil, but this time you're not going to press as hard because you want it to be lighter than the one before it, okay? So remember, you're going to go a little bit lighter and you're not going to overlap the lines as much. And in fact, as you go down your continuum from dark to light, you're going to have those lines be farther and farther apart. I'm going to quickly show you number 4. I'm going to skip over 3. I'm going to have you do that on your own. I'm going to show you with 4, you want to just, it's the next one right next to white. So you've really got to sort of make those lines very far from each other to give you just a very faint light shading, okay? All right, so I'm going to pull this up again to give you one last look, and then we are going to transition to the next exercise. So take a mental picture from darkest to lightest, all the various values in between from 1 to 5, okay? This is going to be a reference for you. It is not like a final, it's not meant to be a design. All right, so now we are going to move on to another type, a specific type of shading called cross-hatching, okay? So cross-hatching, we're going to be doing cross-hatching followed by stipple. So let me just show you that I have one example of cross-hatching and one example of stipple, okay? So that's where we're going now for cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is an excellent way of shading where you're using lines going straight up and down and side to side, as in this example, to give your contour line drawing dimension, okay? So you can see straight up and down and side to side, all right? So as you can see in this example, we're starting with just a contour of lips, okay? So if you have a mirror, you can go ahead and look in your mirror to look at the outside shape of your lips. Or if you don't have a mirror, it's fine. You can just draw from your mind's eye, okay? So we're going to start with the contour line, okay? And then we're going to start to crosshatch. But before we do that, we're going to take our paper with the continuum and we're going to fold it in half. This is going to give us two fields of view, one for our stipple activity and one for our cross-hatching activity. So get those corners lined up, make a crease, open it up. Make sure you can open up your continuum so you can see this side can be for cross-hatching and this side can be for stipple. All right, let's begin. So by now, hopefully you've already started. You're going to go ahead and take your pencil. And remember, for this part, for the contour drawing, you want to do nice light lines, okay? Because until you've got down what you like, right, you may not want to commit to those lines by making them very dark. So this is like what we call sketching. And with sketching, you use a very light touch, okay? So that if you make a mistake, oops, I made a mistake, I can go back and erase it and there's no confusing trace of a line, okay? So get your lips, the contour of your lips, which means the outside, drawn here. Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger so that it'll be easier to see. And then we're going to make the round part here and then go ahead and make the inside part of your lips. And this is just the contour here, okay? Once you've got that, we're going to go back and shade using the technique called cross-hatching. Now, with cross-hatching, there's like two steps after you've got the contour. The first is the hatching, okay? So you're making lines in one direction to give your lips some dimension. So you want to identify, let's really quick identify. There is light areas, and then there's dark areas, okay? So we're going to decide what we want to be light and leave them blank. And then we're going to have to go to the other areas that we want to shade by making light hatching marks, okay? So go ahead and do that now. Just making the hatching marks. And then we will go back and do the cross-hatching, which are lines in the opposite direction, okay, to give this drawing some shading, some dimension through shading, okay? Now, as you're doing this, you want to sort of take a peek down at your value continuum so that you can get as many of these values as allows, or as you see, or as you want to create in your drawing, okay? So I'm going to do some shading in here, and this is basically the hatching. Looks a little funny at first, doesn't it? Now we're going to go back and do the cross-hatching, which means we're going to go in the opposite direction. So these lines went straight up and down. Now I'm going to turn my drawing and I'm going to go in the opposite direction, okay? This is going to give it even a darker look. Now, just like before, if you want it to be lighter, then you're going to press lightly and also increase the space between the lines, okay? So the darker you want the lines to be, the closer you want them to be together. And also you can press a little bit harder on your pencil. If you want things to be a little bit lighter, you're going to leave more space and you're going between the lines and you're going to press more lightly on your paper with your pencil, okay? So I'm going to fill in some areas here. All right, this is called cross-hatching. Okay, so I'm going to show you one other example of cross-hatching with some other objects, just to give you an idea of how it works. You see the pattern, straight up and down and side to side. And this is what gives it a nice contour drawing, more dimension, more character, and more interest. Okay, so it's time for us to move on to stipple, also known as pointillism. So if you did not get a chance to finish your cross-hatching, don't worry about it. You can come back to it a little bit later. All right, so now if you want, you could fold this over so that you have a field of view that's dedicated specifically for your stipple. Okay, so I'm going to show you some examples of stipple. Stipple is basically shading. Instead of with lines like we do in cross-hatching, stipple is shading with lots of different dots. That's why it's called pointillism, because it's using points to shade. You can see that this area is much more concentrated with points, and as it moves out, the points become farther and farther apart, which makes it lighter and lighter. Okay, so another example is this very cool example of a mug. This is all done with points. Okay, you see in the middle it's quite light. That's because the dots are very far apart. And here in this areas here, it's much, much darker because those dots are overlapping. So pointillism takes a lot of time. So I recommend you definitely stay within this field of view and even make something a little bit miniature. Okay, really quick, I'm going to pull up this chart. This is a continuum of light to dark with using points. So here you can see it's just basically an example of the farther apart, the lighter it is. And then as the dots get more concentrated and closer together, you get darker colors. So that's something you keep in mind. I recommend that you have, let's say 3 or 4 different values on your drawing. All right, so let's get into it. So we're going to start with just a simple contour drawing. Okay, you can take an object like a bowl or a cup. Again, I recommend you make it small because it can be challenging to do the stipple because it's a little bit time consuming with all the points. So I'm going to make a little mug, and I'm up here on this pedestal, so it's a little bit awkward for me to draw this way, but I want you to see what I'm doing. And so go ahead and get started on your very simple drawing. And then once you've got the basic contour, you're going to go back and you're going to shade using dots. Okay. So once again, looking at an example, you want to sort of make areas that are dark right next to areas that are light to create what we call contrast. And this is what's going to make your drawing very interesting. So you can start by identifying where you want it to be light. So I'm going to say I'm going to make this area light right here. So I'm going to start in by doing the dots, okay? And they don't have to be perfect dots. They can be just very, very quickly. You can very quickly dot it up, especially in areas where you want it to be concentrated and very dark. So you're going to dot it up like this, okay? And as you can see, it does take a bit of time to get it to be dark because it's, after all, just a single point from a very small pencil. But you get the idea of what pointillism or stipple is and have it in your toolbox for a method of shading. And sometimes it's very cool and fun to actually do this with a black marker. Of course, there's more commitment when you do that because you can't erase a black marker, but it is something that as you feel more confident and maybe you want to continue your learning, you could always go back and do that with a black marker, okay? So the important thing to remember is to identify the lights and darks of your drawings when you are shading, okay? You want to sort of look at it before, look at your contour once you've got your contour drawn, and then you want to say which areas you want to have light and leave them blank, and then which areas you want to have dark, and then just fill them in with either the pointillism or stipple technique or the cross-hatching technique that looks like this. All right, so you can continue to work on this or clean up if you'd like. We're going to do a little closing reflection, and I'd like for everyone to just sit up straight, take a deep breath through your nose, breathe out your mouth. Maybe do that again, deep breath in and out. Now open up your eyes and take a look at what you've drawn. Think about some of the things that I spoke about and think about how you felt doing this activity. And I want you to maybe in your mind come up with 1 or 2 things that you really liked from this lesson. And after you're done, if you could tell a trusted adult what you like, a word or a phrase of something that you really liked, that would really help reflect your experience back to them. So again, thank you so much for joining me. I'm Miss Andrea. This has been a lesson on value and shading. I encourage you to keep creating. You can come back to this another time and continue to shade using cross-hatching or stipple at another time, or you could keep working. And if you want to see any of these modules another time, just go ahead back and watch them. This is number 2 in a series of 4. The first one being contour drawing and this one being shading. Thanks so much. See you next time. Keep creating. This is Miss Andrea signing out.